Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. They harassed him, without knowing he was a brutal fighter. Big mistake. Silence. That's what Jaden Carter had learned to master. Not an empty silence. Not a silence of fear. But a charged silence. A silence that watches. That listens. That learns. A silence built like armor, patiently forged in the cracks of pain. In silence, he had grown. He had known her on the long winter nights in the Bronx, when his mother came home late, exhausted, her hands trembling but her smile intact. He had known him in apartments with thin walls, where the shouts of the neighbors sometimes covered the beating of his own heart. In silence, he had learned to take it all in. The teasing. The beatings. The humiliation of being that kid who was ignored. The boy who never asked for anything, because he understood too early that in his world, asking was a luxury. And in the silence, he had learned to strike back, at the right time. Not like those explosive children who hit without thinking. Jaden, on the other hand, waited. He analyzed. He anticipated. He was the kind of boy who measured the wind before shooting the arrow. When he walked through the gates of the prestigious Jefferson High School in Brooklyn Heights one September morning, he didn't even look up. He knew. He already knew he wasn't welcome. Not because he had done anything. Not because he was bad or threatening. But because of what others thought they saw in him. An athletic body in overly simple clothes. A straight, but closed look. Black skin in a predominantly white neighborhood. A silence that would soon be taken for arrogance, or fear. And Jaden knew exactly what that meant. They were going to test him. Provoke him. Classify him. Simple clothes. A pair of faded jeans, a pair of worn sneakers, a plain, unbranded sweatshirt. Cap without logo. Pulled slightly forward, not to play tough, but to hide the scars of nights too long. Worn backpack. The same one for years. Seam mended with red thread. One pocket torn. Inside, 3 pens, a notebook, and a folded photo of his mother. No latest watch. Jaden didn't wear time on his wrist. He felt it in his stomach, like an invisible hourglass. No latest iPhone. Just an old phone with a cracked screen. No Instagram account. No stories. Just reality. And above all, not a word. No hello. No smile. No attempt to integrate. It wasn't that he didn't want to. He had learned to never offer his face to those who wanted to slap him. At 16, Jaden Carter entered a world that wasn't his own. He grew up in the bowels of the Bronx, where the asphalt heats up even at night, and where dreams burn faster than they are born. His mother, Angela Carter, was a nursing home aide. She worked day and night. And even when she was sick, she never stopped. It was she who taught him this maxim. The world will give you nothing. So stand tall, even when you have nothing left to hold on to. But one day, she didn't come home. A devastating illness. Too late. Too poor for treatment. Jaden had buried his mother in absolute silence. And hadn't said a word for weeks. It was Tasha Morgan, his mother's sister, who came to pick him up. She lived in Brooklyn, worked as a night nurse, and had no children. But she opened her door, her heart, and her accounts to Jaden. She changed her schedule. She took out a loan to enroll him at Jefferson High, believing a fresh start could change his life. But even the brightest walls don't always hide shadows. Because in this shiny, luxurious high school, with its sparkling windows and ivory-colored lockers, there were looks. Judgments. Unspoken rules. Well-dressed wild animals, who sniffed out the slightest weakness. And without knowing it, they had just encountered a silent predator. Not a dangerous boy. But a boy who had survived the chaos. And who, if pushed, could recreate it. They called each other Tyler Grant, Mason Carter, no relation, and Chad Whitmore. 3 smooth faces, 3 powerful names, 3 heirs to comfort and impunity. They were the sons of the men the other students saw on television. Tyler, son of an influential New York senator. Mason, son of a high-profile corporate lawyer. And Chad, whose father ran a private bank whose logo adorned the walls of the school gym. In the corridors, they were the uncrowned kings. Handsome, confident, charismatic. Always well-dressed, always surrounded. Smiling with the teachers, brilliant in oral exams, good students, just enough to be congratulated, never enough to be suspected. But as soon as the doors of the rooms closed, they became again what they truly were, social predators, refined, methodical, without remorse. Their pleasure came not from physical violence, but from subtle humiliation, from the well-placed word, from the contagious laughter that isolated the target. Their power was the audacity to do anything, knowing they would be forgiven. When Jaden Carter walked through the doors of Jefferson High, he hadn't even looked at them. And that's what started it all. They spotted him on the first day. Not for a fault. Not for provocation. But for his silence. For his lack of submission. In a world where everyone was looking to belong, Jaden was looking for nothing. No space. No validation. No friends. And for boys like Tyler, Mason and Chad, this refusal to play along was an affront. "Hey, new guy, is it Halloween every day at your house?" Chad laughed cruelly, pointing at Jaden's worn sneakers. "Are you lost, brother?" "The basketball court is at the other school," Mason added, in that mocking, half-joking, half-racist tone. "Don't you speak? Or didn't you learn English in your ghetto?" Tyler sneered, crossing his arms smugly. Jaden never answered. He looked at them briefly. Without anger. Without fear. He picked up his things when they dropped them. He would wipe his tray when they knocked it over. And he left. Not because he was weak. But because he knew the power of silence. And every day something rumbled inside him. No anger. Not yet. But an inner alert, an ancient breath that said, "Careful. It's going uphill." A survival instinct, awakened. The call of chaos. At 9 years old, Jaden had no friends. No toys. No childhood. He grew up among the apartment blocks, the sirens, and the arguments behind the walls. One day, while returning from the grocery store with a bag of bread for his mother, he found himself in the middle of a score settling. 2 men. A knife. Screams. Jaden had seen the blood, the gun raised towards him, and he had frozen. But someone had intervened. An elderly man with a shaved head and calloused hands. Miguel Torres, nicknamed Sensei, a former professional fighter turned martial arts master in a small, forgotten dojo in the Bronx. He had disarmed the assailant with a single gesture. Then he turned to Jaden, without a word, and held out his hand. It was on that day that Jaden was saved. And recruited. Miguel Torres didn't teach rich kids. He taught broken children. Jaden became his quietest student. Day after day, year after year, he learned. English boxing, for the impact. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for mastery. Grappling, for control. Breathing, for composure. Discipline, to never become like those who hurt for no reason. But above all, he learned one rule. You won't learn to hit. You will learn to choose when not to hit. Because real power is not about winning. It is about holding on, without falling into hatred. For 7 years, Jaden never missed a single training session. Even on rainy days. Even when sick. Even when grieving. He punched the bag until his arms shook. He fell, got up, fell again. And one evening, after a particularly tough session, Sensei Torres placed his hand on his shoulder. You're not a child anymore, Jaden. You're a soldier. But promise me one thing. You will never use what I taught you, unless you have no choice. Jaden looked up at him. And in a hoarse breath, he had answered. I swear to you, Sensei. What neither Tyler, nor Mason, nor Chad knew. It was that the boy they were harassing had been trained in fire. Not to attack, but to cash in until the last limit. And only then, explode. But they continued. Every day. And what Jaden felt inside him, it wasn't time yet. But the moment was approaching. It was a Wednesday evening, when Jefferson High was slowly emptying, swallowed by the silence of the hallways and the pale glow of the still-on fluorescent lights. The last bus had already left the parking lot, lockers slammed here and there, and the janitors were mopping the floors to the sound of their headphones. Jaden was calmly closing his locker, ready to walk home, when his gaze fell on a folded piece of paper, slipped into the metal slot. He unfolded it. Do you think you can ignore us? Meet us in the locker room. Show that you're not a girl. No signature. But he didn't need one. He knew. It was Tyler. Chad. Mason. Kings fallen from a fragile throne. A trap. An ambush. A planned humiliation, probably filmed. Content for TikTok, or a private snap that would go viral around school the next day. Jaden read the message one last time, then slipped the paper into his pocket. He could have ignored it. Left. But he didn't. He went there. Not to fight. Not for revenge. But to put an end to this spiral. Definitively. The door creaked as he pushed it open. The smell of disinfectant, damp metal, and sweat lingered in the air. It was dark, with only a few lights on the ceiling flickering lazily. And there they were. Tyler. Mason. Chad. Dressed in black, sniggering, leaning against the lockers. A camera on a tripod, flashing faintly. A phone held in hand, ready to capture the humiliation. The setting for a social lynching. Well, the mute got our message, Chad said, with a wicked smile. You think you're special, man? You think just because you keep your mouth shut, you're above it? Mason added, stepping forward. You think you're invincible? You'll see that silence doesn't protect you from blows, Tyler added, rolling his shoulders. Jaden remained still. His face was neutral. No words. A beat. Then another. The moment was getting closer. And suddenly the first shot rang out. A jab, delivered by Mason. Brutal. Rushed. Poorly controlled. But Jaden was already gone. His body slid sideways like a fluid shadow. His feet pivoted, his center of gravity dropped. Chaos had just been unleashed. In a single breath, Jaden grabbed Mason by the wrist, diverted his momentum, and threw him violently against the lockers. The metal groaned under the impact. Chad tried to corner him, bad idea. Jaden took a precise step back, hooked his leg, and Chad crashed to the ground. In the same movement, Jaden locked his arm in a submission lock, Chad's face grimacing, unable to move. Tyler, his eyes wide, hesitated for a second. Just one. Too late. Jaden leaped up, one knee raised, into the solar plexus. Tyler collapsed, gasping for air, his lips split open. He lay on the ground, struggling to breathe, his eyes wide with terror. All this had only lasted 6 seconds. Not a cry. Not an insult. Just precision. Discipline. Control. Jaden slowly sat up. His breathing was calm. His controlled gestures. His eyes, unwavering. He had not struck them with hatred. He hadn't let himself go. Every move had been precise. Calculated. Necessary. He walked over to the tripod, lowered the still-on camera, and cut the recording. Then he picked up the phone, which was still filming on the floor. Cracked screen. Video paused. He turned it off. And only then did he turn his head to Tyler, who was looking at him, sitting against a locker, panting, collapsed. His mask of arrogance shattered. Jaden crouched down, his elbows resting on his knees. His gaze was steady, sharp as a controlled blade. He spoke softly. For the first time. I let you play. Now the game is over. He stood up without hurrying. Then he turned his back and left the locker room, his footsteps echoing in the icy silence the three boys had never known before. The silence of helplessness. The next morning, Jefferson High was not the same school. The hallways, usually filled with mock laughter and empty conversation, were filled with a dull, tense air. Students glanced at each other out of the corners of their eyes. Voices whispered in corners, and glances lingered with every step Jaden took. The self-proclaimed kings of high school, Tyler, Mason, and Chad, were mere shadows of their former selves. None of them were sitting in their usual seats in the lobby or cafeteria. No more sarcasm. No more jokes. No more show. Their faces, marked by the night they had just experienced, bore fear, shame, and a new truth: they were no longer untouchable. And yet, the school was rumbling. The video, or at least, part of the scene captured before Jaden turned it off, had leaked. The file had been sent to private groups, shared in a loop. What the students saw was not a fight, it was a precision hurricane. The new one is a monster. He turned all three over as if they were foam. He didn't even sweat. He looks like a secret agent or a professional fighter. Legends were born. But Jaden remained silent. As always. At lunchtime, a security guard came to get him. The principal wants to see you. Right away. Jaden showed nothing. He calmly closed his notebook, slipped it into his bag, stood up, and followed the adult without a word. He knew it would come. And he had prepared himself. But as he entered Principal Mr. Lawson's office, something stopped him in his tracks. Sensei Miguel Torres was there. Standing. Arms crossed. Straight as a bronze statue. His gaze hard, but not threatening. Present. Unwavering. Jaden felt a tension release in his neck. He didn't know how Torres had learned. But he had come. And that was enough. Mr. Lawson, sitting behind his large mahogany desk, maintained a closed posture. Nervous look, hands clasped. Jaden, what you did, is serious. But Torres interrupted him in a calm, serious voice, as measured as the tone of a verdict. No. What your students did is serious. My student didn't attack. He stopped a premeditated attack, orchestrated in your school, with your cameras, under your supervision. You can rule it out, if you think it is the problem. Or, you can open your eyes to what your school is becoming. A tense silence fell. Mr. Lawson swallowed slowly. For the first time, his authority seemed fragile. What followed was quick. Tyler's parents, Mason and Chad, used to being controlling, tried to hush it up. They called lawyers. Threatened legal action. Accused Jaden of violence, of having traumatized their sons. But this time, the walls didn't hold. Several students, who had remained silent for months, decided to speak out. Young girls humiliated in sports. Boys mocked, pushed, insulted, always behind closed doors. Teachers who had seen nothing, but suddenly could no longer deny it. An internal investigation was opened. Testimonies accumulated. Evidence emerged. And the pack fell. Chad was suspended. Mason, removed from the student council. Tyler, forced to publicly apologize in a letter read in class. They did not fall for the blows received. But for all the years they had struck without being seen. Jaden did not become a celebrity. He didn't want to. He never wanted to be seen. But something deeper settled around him, respect. Students he didn't know high-fived him. Former harassers, less violent but accomplices, came to apologize. Some even asked him where he learned to fight. To control oneself. not to be exploded until necessary. He didn't always answer. But he listened. And then one day, during an assembly on bullying, the principal announced that Jaden Carter would speak briefly. The room fell silent. He went up onto the platform. No microphone. No plug. He looked around the room. Silence fell. Not out of fear. Out of concern. And in a calm, collected voice, he said, "It wasn't my strength that scared you. It is your own cowardice that has been revealed. I grew up in violence. You made it to feel powerful." He then went down without greeting. Without waiting for applause. And the room remained frozen. Because in that quiet voice there was more truth than in all the adult speeches put together. Months later, far from the halls of the high school where it all began, Jaden opened a small dojo in a dilapidated community center in the Bronx. It was a gray building, forgotten between two noisy streets, where the walls still bore the scars of time and storms. But inside, something else was born. He called it, the Sixth Second. A strange name for those who didn't know. But for Jaden, it was more than a nod to that day in the locker room. It was a philosophy. A symbol. The sixth second is that imperceptible moment after fear, before rage. This is where everything is decided. In every tense situation, in every humiliation, in every provocation, there is a window. 1 second. Just one. He repeated it to his students. Lost teenagers. Former bullies. Children too quiet, too often ignored. In the sixth second, you choose who you are. Either you react the way they want you to, or you act the way you choose. The dojo didn't have brand new tatami mats or mirrors on the walls. But it did have something else: respect, pain transmitted, forgiveness learned through hard work. Jaden didn't see himself as a master. He saw himself as a guide. A shadow guide. He welcomed those who, like him once, carried silences as heavy as stones in their stomachs. He taught them how to move. How to breathe. How to stand up. But above all, to no longer let ourselves be defined by the fear of others. One day, a local journalist came to do a story on him. She had heard about this quiet young man, once bullied, who had become a mentor to a generation that was said to be lost. She asked him, "Why this name, the Sixth Second?" Jaden looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, softly. Because the first reflex is always anger. The second, fear. The third, ego. The fourth, memory. The fifth, chaos. But in the sixth second, if you're still standing, you can choose. That day, she didn't ask any further questions.